110 Chinese warships are now sitting inside the first island chain. The question that every defense planner in Tokyo, Manila, and Washington is asking right now is the same one. Can Beijing get them out? On May 22, 2026, Taiwanese officials announced the detection of an unprecedented deployment of over 100 Chinese warships spread across the first island chain, stretching from the Yellow Sea all the way down to the South China Sea. The announcement wasn't routine. Normally, China maintains 50 to 60 vessels in these waters. The sharp increase prompted Taiwan to accuse Beijing of deliberately disrupting the regional status quo. But here's the part Beijing may not have fully calculated. Sending 110 ships into these waters is one thing. Getting them back out, or keeping them sustained, is something else entirely. Stretching from Japan down through Taiwan and the Philippines before curving toward the South China Sea, the first island chain is one of the most important geographic concepts in modern military strategy. It looks like a long arc of islands just off the coast of mainland China, but in defense planning, it serves as a natural barrier shaping naval power, air operations, missile strategy, and regional deterrence. While piercing the first island chain is sometimes seen as China's strategic goal, its default position is a caged naval power that must pass through one of a half-dozen narrow waterways to escape the Asian littoral seas. These choke points include the Malacca, Lombok, and Sunda Straits to the south, the Bashi Channel and the Miyako Strait, which lie due west and bound Taiwan, and the Tsushima Strait, the main passageway north between Japan and the Korean Peninsula. Those aren't wide-open ocean highways, they're bottlenecks, and right now, every single one of them is being watched. According to Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense and Coast Guard reports, more than 100 People's Liberation Army Navy vessels have been observed operating simultaneously across key areas of the chain, with increased activity near the Miyako Strait and waters east of Taiwan, expanded presence in the Bashi Channel and northern South China Sea, and a notable concentration of destroyers, frigates, amphibious ships, and support vessels. The movement is believed to be connected to a recent Beijing summit where Chinese leadership discussed strengthening maritime capabilities and regional influence. That's the political framing from Beijing's side. The strategic reality on the ground looks considerably more complicated. So what exactly did the United States and Japan do when China massed this fleet? And does the Allied response actually close the exits? China exercised its ability to transit Japan's stretch of the first island chain by sending 10 warships through its maritime passes in the week spanning late June 2026. A Chinese Navy frigate and guided missile destroyer were among 9 vessels spotted sailing near Japan and toward the Pacific Ocean between June 26th and 30th. Japan tracked every single one of them. 8 Chinese Navy vessels were spotted heading toward the Pacific Ocean between the afternoon of June 26th and early Tuesday morning. The number of trips by Chinese and Russian ships through Japanese straits is not unusually high, but their operations are certainly expanding and intensifying, a Japan Joint Staff spokesman confirmed. The frigate Anyang and the guided missile destroyer Dongguan sailed the Miyako Strait on separate days. The guided missile destroyer Suzhou and the surveillance ship Tianshu-Xing passed between Amami Oshima and Yokowatajima. The Suzhou then returned toward the East China Sea. The frigate Yancheng and the replenishment ship Dongpinghu transited the Osumi Strait south of Kagoshima. Japan's Maritime Self-Defense Force shadowed each vessel in turn. That's the current reality. China can move ships through the gaps, but it can't do it without being watched, catalogued, and trailed. Critical choke points include the Taiwan Strait at 130 kilometers wide, the Miyako Strait at 250 kilometers, and the Bashi Channel at 250 kilometers. China's marginal seas are shallow and heavily surveilled, making submarine breakout through the chain a persistent vulnerability. Shallow, surveilled water is the enemy of a submarine fleet. It's also the enemy of a large surface fleet trying to coordinate a covert breakout. That's precisely why what's happening right now is structurally more dangerous for Beijing than it appears from the outside. Now here's the deeper problem China faces, and this is where the scale of 110 ships stops looking like raw power and starts looking like a liability. Even if China augments its replenishment fleet significantly, it still faces a hard reality. Resupply vessels are inherently vulnerable in wartime, possessing limited organic defense systems. Sinking an enemy's supply ships can often do as much operational damage to a task force as striking combat vessels directly. The People's Liberation Army Navy does not appear to have the logistical capacity to sustain high-tempo carrier operations outside the first island chain for an extended period of time. Inside the chain, where those same replenishment lines run through waters dominated by Allied surveillance and missile systems, that problem multiplies. And the Allied position inside the chain has been hardening, fast. Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and Australia form the backbone of a security architecture that positions United States forces within striking distance of the Chinese mainland, while providing layered early warning and defense capabilities. Japan hosts the largest concentration of United States forces in the region, with approximately 54,000 personnel across installations including Kadena Air Base, the largest United States air base in the Pacific, and Naval Station Yokosuka, home to the United States 7th Fleet. In 2026, Japan and the United States agreed to expand joint military training across the first island chain. That agreement wasn't symbolic. It was the legal and operational framework for exactly the kind of coordinated chokepoint monitoring that's now tracking every Chinese hull in these waters. The 2026 Balikatan exercises focused on enhancing interoperability among United States allies in the Indo-Pacific and developing a denial-based defense concept within the first island chain that integrates lessons from the war in Ukraine. The lessons from Ukraine that matter most here are the ones about what happens to large, concentrated formations when they enter kill zones without sufficient air cover. Warships from the United States, the Philippines, Japan, Australia, and Canada conducted combined exercises focusing on anti-submarine operations, fleet air defense, and replenishment at sea in the West Philippine Sea from April 20th to May 1st. The first time Japan has joined Balikatan as an active participant. United States, Philippine, and Japanese forces also practiced defending against an amphibious invasion using the high-mobility artillery rocket system to strike surface targets at distance. That's not coincidence in timing. 110 Chinese warships mass in late May. The Allied coalition had already spent the weeks prior rehearsing exactly how to deny and destroy a massed naval force inside the chain. United States Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said in a June congressional hearing that modernizing capabilities to deny Chinese aggressiveness in the first island chain was a top priority for the Trump administration. He also confirmed that both the duration and scale of joint training are increasing. For China's Navy to project power globally, or even to blockade Taiwan, it must first punch through this geographic gauntlet. Every major Chinese naval movement must squeeze through one of several narrow passages, each offering the United States Navy a chance to turn geography into a weapon. This is the trap's real architecture. China moved 110 ships into a position where they are simultaneously threatening Taiwan and exposed to the full weight of Allied chokepoint strategy. The exits are narrow. The Allies are positioned on every one of them. To deny China the seas and skies throughout the first island chain, the United States-led coalition must do so with forces that sortie from within it, not from the continental United States. That doctrine is now fully operational. The Allied forces aren't sailing from California. They're already in Okinawa, in the Philippines' northern bases, in Yokosuka. They're already inside the locks of the cage. Now for the counter-argument, because it deserves to be stated plainly. China's fleet isn't helpless, and it knows these waters. The People's Liberation Army Navy has commissioned 3 aircraft carriers, with the Fujian featuring an electromagnetic catapult system comparable to United States technology. China's submarine fleet of approximately 60 boats, including 6 nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines, seeks to establish credible deterrence by operating beyond the first island chain in the deep waters of the Pacific. China's approach integrates land-based ballistic missiles like the DF-21D and DF-26, dubbed carrier killers, with ranges exceeding 1,500 kilometers, designed to threaten naval assets beyond coastal waters. Submarine forces, including quiet Type 039A Yuan-class diesel-electric boats equipped with anti-ship cruise missiles, further enable underwater threats to sea lines of communication. Those missiles can reach the Allied bases inside the chain. Kadena Air Base, Yokosuka, the new Philippine installations in Luzon, all of them sit within DF-26 range. Beijing's bet is that the threat of those missiles keeps Allied surface forces cautious enough to leave the choke points imperfectly sealed. China deploys an average of 40 to 50 warships and Coast Guard vessels daily in the South China Sea, despite pledges not to militarize the region. The 110-ship deployment roughly doubled that baseline in a matter of days. The sheer mass of the force is itself the argument, that no alliance can watch and threaten that many hulls simultaneously across 3 seas. But mass has its own costs. South Korea can enable United States power projection and sea denial in the Yellow Sea. This would bottle up the People's Liberation Army Navy's North Sea Fleet, the naval component of the People's Liberation Army's Northern Theater Command. Add that to Allied pressure from Japan's south and the Philippines' north, and China's 110 ships aren't one fleet in one sea. They're fractured across 3 separate water bodies, each with its own set of choke points and Allied surveillance assets. If the People's Liberation Army's anti-access and area denial system is effective enough to keep the United States Navy at arm's length from Taiwan, then it will also be sufficient to thwart a close blockade of the China coast. That's China's gamble. It's also a gamble that only pays off if China's missiles actually deter the alliance, and the alliance's behavior in the last 8 months suggests deterrence is not working the way Beijing hoped. Relations between China and Japan entered a state of crisis in November 2025, after Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi said in the Japanese parliament that a Chinese attack on Taiwan could potentially constitute an existential crisis for Japan, allowing Japan to take military action in collective self-defense. Following these remarks, the Chinese consul general in Osaka made threatening comments against Takaichi on social media, triggering a diplomatic row between the countries. China subsequently criticized the presence of a Japanese self-defense forces vessel in the Taiwan Strait. At a regular news briefing, a foreign ministry spokesperson described the move as provocative and said Beijing had lodged an official protest with Tokyo. Japan has not confirmed the Taiwan Strait transit, but local media reports say it was the 4th by a Japanese warship since 2024. 4 transits, each one a signal that Japan has decided the Taiwan Strait is its business now. Each one landing in Beijing as a demonstration that the crisis diplomacy of November 2025 didn't produce Japanese restraint, it produced Japanese resolve. China has steadily escalated pressure in the Taiwan Strait by conducting large-scale military drills, expanding legal claims over the region, and repeatedly sending military and Coast Guard vessels close to Taiwan. China has also recently disrupted Taiwanese officials' international travel and stepped up gray zone activities in regional waters and airspace. The gray zone campaign and the overt naval surge are 2 arms of the same strategy. Beijing is trying to normalize dominance before the alliance can fully close the exits. The 110-ship deployment is the most aggressive expression of that logic yet. It says, "We can fill these waters faster than you can seal them." The Allied response says, "We don't need to outrace you, we just need to own the doorways." For Chinese military planners, operating beyond the first island chain, and eventually the second, represents the difference between a coastal defense force and a true blue water navy capable of projecting power across the Western Pacific. The first island chain is not just a barrier to be monitored. From Beijing's perspective, it is a barrier to be overcome. That ambition is real. The capability to fulfill it under contested conditions is not yet there. 110 ships can project menace. They can rehearse a blockade. What they can't easily do, against an alliance that has spent the first half of 2026 drilling precisely for this scenario, is break out into open ocean without fighting through a gauntlet of submarines, anti-ship missiles, and Allied air cover positioned at every gap. The exits exist on the map. Whether they're genuinely open is the question that the next phase of this standoff will answer. Does the scale of China's deployment now represent a strategic overreach that has handed the alliance a targeting picture it could only have dreamed about 2 years ago? And if Beijing's missile deterrent holds, keeping Allied surface forces back from the choke points, does that actually create a corridor wide enough for 110 warships to operate freely? Or does it simply delay the moment of contact while burning down China's own logistics? Tell me what you think in the comments. If you want to follow how this standoff develops, because it's far from over, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next update.